Welcome to Full Revolution Channel. Today we present summary of the book How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. It's written by Scott Adams. Now, before beginning to recount his life story, Scott Adams always emphasizes something really important. He says he didn't write this book as some enlightened guru. He wrote it as an expert in failure. And Scott's life is just this great case study of how someone can act foolishly, make the wrong decisions, and fail on almost every project they touch. And yet somehow still manage to win big if they know how to manage luck and, crucially, build a good system. Scott grew up in a small town called Windham, New York, a town with really nothing but freezing cold and snow that falls almost all year round. He was a pretty ordinary kid, often sick, had allergies, terrible social skills. And his legendary story of failure really begins when he graduated from Hartwick College and stepped into the real world with a lot of misplaced confidence. Let's find out more.
And that framing, the expert in failure, that is the crucial lens for this whole deep dive. Our mission isn't just to, recount the biography of the guy who created Dilbert. It's about extracting the philosophy he built out of decades of setbacks. Adams isn't trying to teach us how to be a successful cartoonist. He's teaching us how to treat failure as a strategic resource. We're really going to explore his model for success, which is this conscious decision to move away from chasing specific, finite goals and instead focusing entirely on these repeatable, probability-improving systems.
I really appreciate that emphasis on systems because when you look at his life, he wasn't really aiming for the Dilbert outcome at all. He was just building a framework that made any kind of success more probable. He calls himself a professional simplifier. And his genius, I think, lies in stripping complicated situations down to their absurd yet true core. It's exactly what he did with corporate culture for years, and now he's just applying that same thinking to his own life.
Exactly. He gives us a template. It's an instruction manual, not from someone who won the lottery on the first try, but from someone who just systematically failed forward. He kept failing until the odds finally tilted in his favor. And the key concept that organizes this whole approach is what he calls the math of success. It's the idea that every skill you acquire roughly doubles your odds of success. His story is really the prime exhibit for leveraging a stack of, 6 or 7 mediocre skills into one uniquely valuable thing.
Okay, so let's unpack this journey. Let's start with what Adams calls his absolute favorite spectacular failure. This takes us all the way back to his senior year at Hartwick College. He was determined to get an entry-level sales job at Xerox, which at the time was one of the prestigious Big 8 companies.
And this is such a fantastic starting point because it just demonstrates this profound ignorance paired with this completely misplaced confidence. Adams thought that his academic excellence, he had the best grades of all the interviewees, was his main advantage.
For a sales job.
For a sales position. He completely misunderstood that the professional world values things like social skills and preparedness and communication far more than academic theory.
Right. And the story around the interview itself is just legendary because of the sheer physical danger involved. He had to travel to Syracuse, New York for this interview. We were talking late winter in upstate New York, a half blizzard, freezing temperatures, and as he puts it, ass-freezing temperatures. And he made 2 just spectacularly bad decisions before he even hit the road.
The first mistake was just pure youthful arrogance mixed with terrible planning. He decided he didn't need a jacket.
Why?
Because logically, he was only traveling from the car to the building. What's the point? And the second mistake showed he had zero understanding of the corporate world. He deliberately did not wear a suit or a tie. He thought dressing formally contradicted his identity as a college student. He was basically signaling he wasn't serious before the interview even began.
That's such a key insight into failure. Sometimes it isn't just bad luck. It's a failure to understand the rules of the game you've decided to play. But the stakes got so much higher, so fast. On the way to Syracuse, his terrible car just broke down completely. Miles from any town, any house, the engine died, the heat vanished, and the weather outside suddenly became life-threatening.
He was in a full-blown survival situation. The temperature was so low that freezing to death wasn't some distant possibility. It was an imminent threat. Adams describes his feet becoming just blocks of ice clunking on the frozen pavement. His legs were starting to fail as he tried to run for help. This wasn't just a bad car day. This was minutes from disaster.
And it's the psychological response to this near-death experience that becomes the real catalyst for change. While he's struggling to stay upright, he makes this solemn, immediate promise to himself. It's like a contract with his own subconscious.
Yes, and that promise was absolutely life-altering. He vowed that if he survived this, he would immediately trade that car for a one-way plane ticket to California, and he would never see snow again. What's so fascinating is that the promise wasn't about landing the job or achieving some specific goal. It was about escaping a system, the system of cold, rural New York that was, actively trying to kill him.
That just redefines motivation, doesn't it? It's not some abstract self-help idea. It was pure primal survival instinct translating directly into a life plan. And luckily for him, he was saved.
He was. Rescued by a traveling shoe salesman in an old station wagon who drove him back to campus. The sales job, of course, was gone. But the failure to land that job was completely irrelevant. The real lesson here is how he honored that promise. He didn't see it as some temporary bargaining chip he made in a panic. He kept it. He moved to Northern California, and he considers it the single smartest decision he ever made. The failure to get the job, combined with that physical terror, provided the motivation to completely relocate and enter a new, more dynamic economic environment where his future success could actually happen. That failure was the ultimate resource.
It sounds like his first successful system was just prioritizing his geographical location for opportunity, born right out of desperation.
Precisely. He consciously exited a high-friction, low-opportunity environment for high-opportunity, high-energy one. He didn't wait for success to find him in Windham, New York. He put himself, geographically, in the path of opportunity. That's managing your luck proactively.
So now he's in California, he's kept his promise, and he enters the world of finance, which brings us to the next phase. Life as a banker and the polite robber. He walks into Crocker National Bank in San Francisco wearing that cheap suit he probably should have worn to the Xerox interview, and he gets hired immediately as a teller.
It's the definition of starting at the bottom. His plan was that classic, goal-oriented mantra, start at the bottom and claw my way to the top. But he admits pretty quickly that he was profoundly incompetent at the basic job. His permanent work record, he notes, included some version of too incompetent to write numbers on a piece of paper. He just wasn't built for that kind of meticulous, detail-oriented work.
And yet, despite this total lack of operational competence, he managed to rocket up the corporate ladder. How does an incompetent teller get promoted?
By understanding that performance and outcome are often totally disconnected in big organizations. He was robbed at gunpoint, not once, but twice, while working as a teller. A terrifying, life-altering experience for anyone. But Adams used this fact not as a source of trauma, but as a source of leverage and dark humor.
He used the robberies to apply for the management training program. That is just pure Scott Adams.
Absolutely. He wrote this witty, engaging letter to the senior vice president of the branch system. He outlined this whole laundry list of highly naive, impractical suggestions for improving the bank. And just nestled within this letter was a reference to his recent, close encounters with armed robbers. He essentially joked his way into a management position.
That's a masterclass in turning trauma into career progression. The SVP, who Adams describes so vividly, a 6'10", red-headed, bearded elf of a man who had a great sense of humor, he found the self-deprecating joke appealing.
Right. He totally bypassed the traditional evaluation process. Even though his operational suggestions were clearly, as Adams says, underwhelming, his personality and audacity won the day. He failed his way to a much better job. And this just illustrates the power of lateral thinking and the importance of soft skills, humor, personality, the ability to tell a persuasive story over just rote technical competence. It's an early sign of that skill stacking system at work.
He spent 8 years total in banking, just cycling through different roles: teller, project manager, lending officer, which he calls his corporate ladder of incompetence. He says he never stayed long enough in any single role to become truly competent.
And that inability to settle into one specialized job was, paradoxically, his system for winning. His most valuable skill became the ability to interview for the next job, which was always a promotion and a raise. He was continuously acquiring new corporate vocabulary, new perspectives, new little snippets of skills, which was all the basis for his future cartoon material, while staying just ahead of the competence curve.
And that system of continuous movement is what eventually saved his career.
It did. He had accepted a job with Pacific Bell right before the acquiring bank decided to do a massive layoff and fire everyone in his department. His short tenure and constant movement meant he was already gone when the major corporate failure happened. He wasn't loyal to the bank, and that lack of loyalty positioned him perfectly for survival.
That banking experience, especially his time in the lending department, crystallized one of his most controversial insights. And this brings us to our next point. Passion is bullshit. This completely flies in the face of every motivational speaker today.
It does, and it comes from this hard-nosed, risk-assessing perspective he learned in the commercial loan room. Adam Zagdag's bank boss had this non-negotiable, unwritten rule. Never make a loan to someone who is following his passion.
Why? Wouldn't passion make them work harder?
The premise, from a purely financial perspective, is that if you're following your passion, let's say you're a passionate tennis enthusiast who opens a tennis supply store, you are in business for the wrong reason. You might prioritize the experience of being around tennis or the emotional fulfillment over the basic, often boring mechanics of profitability, cash flow management, and inventory control.
So passion leads to blindness.
It leads to what they see as bad risk. Passionate people are often more willing to take big, unnecessary risks in pursuit of unlikely goals because the feeling of doing the work is its own reward. This leads to a higher rate of spectacular failure. If you are starting a business just to make money, your decisions are likely to be cold, rational, and optimized for survival. If you're starting a business because you love it, your decisions are often romantic and much, much riskier.
And this brings up the whole idea of survivor bias. We hear constantly from the people who followed their passion, took the huge risk, and actually succeeded.
Exactly. Those successful, passionate people are the survivors who won the lottery. They're the ones who write the books and give the TED Talks, pushing passion as the secret because it sounds humble and accessible. They can claim it's the people's talent. But they are hiding the vast graveyard of everyone else who followed their passion straight into bankruptcy or debt or personal ruin. Adams argues that the successful didn't win because of passion, they won because they were good at business, and that goodness produced the passion after the fact.
So if we forget passion, what's the metric we should be focusing on?
Adams says the real metric, the key to the entire system, is boosting and maximizing your personal energy. Passion is fleeting, emotional, uncontrollable. Energy is controllable, and it's measurable. When your personal energy is high through proper diet, exercise, mental inputs, you perform better at everything. You're more creative, more persuasive, more efficient, and you recover faster from setbacks. Success generates passion, but passion doesn't reliably generate success. The system should always, always focus on maximizing energy.
That focus on energy in a systems mindset really explains why he didn't obsess over finding his one true calling. He saw his life as this continuous test lab, which brings us to the Museum of Awful Inventions, his long series of spectacular entrepreneurial failures. He didn't just accept failure. He actively viewed it as a resource to be aggressively managed, a process he calls needing to mug the shit out of it.
Right. Adams makes it so clear. Failure shouldn't just make you stronger. It must make you smarter, more capable, and better networked. Every dead project is potential fertilizer for the next one. If you walk away from a failure empty-handed, you failed twice.
Okay, let's catalog some of these aromatic failures and detail the specific, concrete value he extracted from each one. Let's start with his first invention in college. Right. The Velcro rosin bag invention for tennis players. It failed immediately.
He designed a rosin bag that attached with Velcro to your shorts. He spent time and energy building a prototype. When he took it to his lawyer, the lawyer immediately shut it down. Said it wasn't patent-worthy because it was just a combination of two existing products, Velcro and a rosin bag. This led to a crucial foundational business lesson. Good ideas have negligible value. The market rewards execution and protection, not abstract ideas.
That must have been incredibly frustrating, but what was the system change?
The change was immediate and permanent. Adams realized he should only focus on ideas he could execute himself without external dependence. No lawyers, no massive capital, no complex manufacturing. This simplified his entire approach, forcing him into ventures that required less overhead and more of his own personal, leverageable skills, like writing and drawing.
Okay, let's look at a smaller project. The meditation guide he wrote shortly after college.
A total commercial disaster. It sold, I think, about 3 copies after he put time and money into advertising these obscure, minor publications. But the value he extracted was immense. He learned foundational skills in local advertising, copywriting, design layout, and product development. The entire cycle of taking an idea to a sellable product. These are essential skills every small entrepreneur needs, and he acquired them through a cheap, fast failure.
Now we move to the early 1980s, when he starts applying himself to the emerging personal computer market. He spent 2 years teaching himself programming on this massive, heavy, portable computer to build a space-themed computer game.
2 years of his spare time, a huge investment. But by the time he finally completed and launched the game, the state-of-the-art in computer graphics and programming had just surged ahead, making his game look totally archaic. He sold fewer than 20 copies. This wasn't a failure of effort, it was a failure of timing and market speed.
So 2 years of work, zero commercial success. How do you mug that failure?
He gained technical genius status. In the early 80s, simply having the vocabulary and the functional ability to program an early PC made you look like a technical expert in your corporate job. This computer savvy helped him get promotions at the bank, and later proved absolutely essential for his cartooning career. When he started Dilbert, the ability to understand and use digital drawing tools like the early Wacom tablets was a direct result of those failed 2 years.
It's the technical skills being transferred laterally. And you see this pattern repeating. He also spent months on a psychic practice program, but decided not to market it.
Right. He realized it wasn't exciting enough to sustain the marketing effort. That failure taught him a lesson about internal motivation and market resonance. If you aren't passionate about the selling process, the product is just going to languish.
This brings us right back to his core theory, the math of success.
Yes. Adams is the living proof. He's a world-famous cartoonist, but he admits he doesn't draw particularly well. His writing is good, but not great. And he's not necessarily the funniest person you'll ever meet. Yet he became a massive success because he stacked those mediocre skills until they became this singular, unbeatable combination.
Let's list that stack then. You've got mediocre drawing, plus good humor, plus all that corporate experience, plus an MBA from Berkeley, technical skills from his failed games, marketing and advertising knowledge from other failed products, business writing skills, psychology knowledge.
And the sum of that stack is infinitely more valuable than achieving world-class expertise in just one of those areas. If he had pursued mastery in drawing, he would be competing with thousands of highly skilled artists. By combining, say, the 90th percentile of business knowledge with the 70th percentile of drawing ability, he created a niche, the syndicated workplace comic, where he had zero competition when he launched.
And he also learned crucial lessons about market timing, especially during the dot-com boom, with his venture into a video on internet startup.
This was a pre-YouTube concept where he accepted stock to promote a video sharing service. The company failed because the timing was just premature. Internet speeds in the mid to late 90s simply couldn't handle widespread quality video sharing. He learned that timing is often the biggest component of success, and it's pure luck. Since you can't control luck, the only functional system is to increase your number of attempts. Try different things until luck finds you. It's a volume game.
And even a tiny product design failure like Folderoo, a manila folder with a kangaroo pocket for floppy disks yielded value?
Yeah, that failure taught him the boundaries of his working relationships. He learned that his syndicate was in the licensing business, not the product design business. That meant he could stop wasting his time chasing physical products and focus entirely on creating intellectual property that the syndicate could license, which aligned perfectly with the Dilbert model. Every single failure was a system optimization event.
This relentless testing and learning directly led to the moment of breakthrough, which is the origin story of Dilbert. He was working the corporate grind at Pacific Bell, waking up at 4 a.m. every day to draw before his day job, then drawing every night. The strip, while it was syndicated, was only a modest success.
It wasn't nearly successful enough for him to consider quitting his stable corporate job, which just shows the commitment required to sustain the system even when the rewards are minimal. But that hyper-intense, compressed schedule created another massive failure threat, a physical breakdown.
The crisis was severe. He developed focal dystonia in his pinky finger from overuse, which made the muscle seize up and rendered drawing by hand almost impossible. In the early 90s, this was a career-ending diagnosis for a cartoonist.
This is such a beautiful intersection of luck, timing, and preparedness. His drawing system was failing him catastrophically. Yet, his earlier skill stacking, all those years he spent failing at computer game design, paid off. His career would have ended right there if not for the simultaneous independent development of Wacom's Cintiq product, which allowed him to draw directly on the computer screen. His technical literacy allowed him to pivot instantly to a new system when his old one failed.
The crisis provided the pressure, and the prior failed ventures provided the solution. But the real engine that turned Dilbert from a modest strip into a global phenomenon was his use of technology to create a continuous feedback loop.
Yes. In 1993, he made a radical move. He started printing his personal email address in the strip. This was completely unprecedented for a syndicated cartoonist. He wasn't just connecting, he was intentionally seeking unfiltered, quantitative data on his product.
And he received, as he puts it, savage feedback from the general public. It was not the gentle praise of friends. It was raw criticism of his bad art and immature writing. But amidst all that noise, a crucial pattern emerged.
The pattern was overwhelming. Both fans and haters consistently preferred the comics, where Dilbert was specifically in the corporate office, dealing with management and bureaucratic nonsense. He was getting immediate, quantitative market research that cost him nothing but time.
And because he viewed the strip as a product, and himself as an entrepreneur, not some precious artist, he had zero attachment to his original artistic vision. He changed the strip's focus immediately and completely.
That pivot focusing entirely on the workplace was the spark in the gasoline. That psychological separation between the art and the business is the defining characteristic of his system's mindset. An artist resists changing their vision based on market demand. An entrepreneur optimizes the product based on feedback loops.
And critically, Dilbert had this immense psychological advantage because of the timing of its launch.
It was the first widely syndicated comic strip focused primarily on office work. This gave him a critical buffer. He wasn't competing with established masters of the genre because the genre didn't exist yet. This allowed him to mature his bad artwork and immature writing in public without unfavorable comparisons. Had he launched a technically mediocre comic even 5 years later, it would have been instantly crushed by competition. Being first gave him the time he needed to improve within the market.
Now, even after achieving global success, the system of failure didn't stop. We have the delicious disaster, the Dil Burrito.
This was his venture into the food industry, a fortified vegetarian burrito company alongside the 2 restaurants he owned. Commercially, he readily acknowledges it was a failure. It lost money and ultimately shut down. But Adams argues that the personal outcome was not failure because he achieved 2 massive non-monetary benefits.
First, he felt immediate relief when the venture ended, which just confirmed he had no love for the work involved. That reinforced his whole energy metric philosophy.
Yes. He learned precisely what drained his energy food manufacturing and restaurant management and what sustained it, drawing and writing. More importantly, the required R&D for fortifying the burritos with vitamins and minerals gave him an unparalleled education in nutrition science. He concluded that nutrition is perhaps 60% bullshit, guessing, bad assumptions, and marketing.
That's a bold statement, but it came from direct, deep research on his part.
He essentially paid for a private, comprehensive education in human physiology and diet that he believes fundamentally increased his lifespan and improved his daily energy. The failure to sell burritos successfully was eclipsed by the success of becoming profoundly informed about his own health inputs. He literally traded a commercial failure for a massive personal health benefit. That is the definition of mugging a failure.
He also connects this failure to his use of affirmations, which is a key part of his system of programming the moist robot.
He noted he did not use affirmations for the Dil Burrito or the Dilbert TV show, and he felt relief when both of them ended. He speculates that affirmations, which are a form of self-directed psychological programming designed to increase focus and energy, they only work when there is a 100% unambiguous desire for success. Since his subconscious didn't truly desire the ongoing management of a food company, the psychological system didn't deliver the outcome, which reinforces the idea that you can't trick your way into a career you hate.
That really sets up the philosophical architecture of the book. The core shift, the central takeaway, is this. Goals are for losers. Systems are for winners. Let's really drill into that distinction for the listener.
The distinction is all about perspective and continuity. A goal is binary and finite. I want to reach $100,000 in sales this quarter. Until you hit that number, you feel like a failure. Once you hit it, you often stop because the goal is achieved. A system is continuous. I will make 20 sales calls every day, or I will write 1,000 words every morning.
So if you focus on the system, you feel successful every single day you execute the process. Regardless of whether you land the big deal or write the perfect sentence, it provides continuous positive reinforcement.
Exactly. Systems-oriented people are always increasing their odds, always learning, always feeling capable. Goal-oriented people are constantly battling failure until that singular moment of achievement. Adams argues that maintaining the system allows success to find you organically. The system is permanent, the goal is temporary.
And as we discussed earlier, the most important metric to track inside this system is personal energy.
Adams sees energy as the human equivalent of corporate profit. If your energy is depleted, every skill you possess is degraded. If your energy is high, even your mediocre skills function at a higher level. He contends that happiness is highly correlated with schedule flexibility, which is a direct reflection of energy and control. A person with a flexible schedule and average resources is often happier than a rich person trapped by a demanding, inflexible schedule.
The continuous objective, therefore, is to maximize schedule freedom. Because when you control your time, work stops feeling like work and starts feeling like pleasurable engagement.
And this is where his radical view of self-management comes in. He approaches managing his attitude and health by treating the brain like a moist computer or a moist robot. The logic is simple. Your body and mind operate based on inputs.
So controlling those physical inputs, exercise, food, and sleep, is the most efficient hack.
He estimates those physical inputs account for 80% of happiness and productivity. The problem most people face is that they try to optimize their behavior using willpower, which is a limited resource. Adams says don't rely on willpower, rely on systems that minimize resistance. Don't keep junk food in the house. Schedule exercise into your calendar like it's a mandatory meeting. Control the inputs and the desired outputs. High energy, good attitude, they become automatic.
But if you're controlling the physical inputs, what about the psychological programming? He argues for the utility of illusions, like daydreaming a spectacular future.
That's the user interface to hack your own brain chemistry. Daydreaming of a spectacular, often unrealistic future, winning a massive award, traveling the world on a yacht, it doesn't need to be realistic. The emotional and physical response that those positive images generate in the present moment raises your energy, raises your optimism, and improves your performance today. It's a functional, useful delusion.
That links directly to his concept of just picking the delusion that works for you.
It's highly pragmatic. If an athlete believes that their lucky socks help them perform better, those socks bolster confidence, lower anxiety, and physically influence performance, regardless of whether the socks actually have magical properties. Adams says if a delusion increases your energy and improves your chances, embrace it. Reality is often overrated. Utility is everything.
This focus on maximizing utility also applies to the system of acquiring skills. The goal, again, isn't mastery. It's just being good enough at a wide variety of things. Adams provides a mandatory list of skills everyone should acquire, starting with public speaking.
His experience with the Dale Carnegie course is the prime evidence for this. He took the course because his employer paid for it, and it changed his life by removing the fear of speaking in front of groups, a fear that cripples careers and limits promotion potential. And the Dale Carnegie method is this profound lesson in applied psychology.
He tells that transformative story about the student who was so terrified she couldn't even form words. Sweat was just running down her face in humiliation.
Right, and the instructor, adhering to the course's strict no criticism rule, responded with only 4 words. Wow, that was brave. That simple sentence completely reframed the situation. It transformed the student's internal narrative from one of public failure to one of extraordinary personal heroism. She hadn't failed, she had fought a fear and executed an act of bravery.
That is such a powerful lesson in leadership and human interaction.
It taught Adams that withholding genuine, focused praise is almost immoral because adults are often starved for a kind word. That ability to instantly reframe a negative event into a positive one is not just a useful social tool, it's a critical management and sales skill. Public speaking isn't just about giving a presentation, it's about mastering that instant, high-stakes psychological interaction.
The second critical skill he demands is psychology, which he calls the purest form of power. Why is understanding human irrationality so essential to success?
Because it helps you navigate the real world. Adams realized early on, I no longer see reason as the driver of behavior. I see simple cause and effect, similar to the way machines operate. If you believe people use reason for important decisions, you will spend your life feeling confused and frustrated, especially in negotiations, sales, or politics.
He learned that acting reasonably often means being taken advantage of by the irrational person.
Precisely. It's smarter to inject calculated emotional insanity into a negotiation like assigning an artificially high value to a trivial deal point, or making an outrageous opening offer because emotions don't bend to reason. People rationalize their decisions after they've already made them emotionally. Understanding cognitive biases is crucial here.
Can you give us a quick, accessible example of how a bias he studied could cost a listener money?
Sure. Take the anchoring effect. Adams realized that the first number presented in negotiations, say a salary or the price of a house, serves as the anchor, even if it's completely irrelevant. The subsequent negotiation always gravitates around that anchor. A savvy negotiator doesn't try to reason the price down. They simply try to establish the highest initial anchor possible. If you understand this, you can structure your whole negotiation system around setting the highest initial anchor, not around being fair or reasonable.
Moving on to the third skill, he highly recommends mastering business writing. This seems foundational, but it's so often overlooked.
It is the most leveraged skill acquisition. Learning to write clearly and persuasively takes relatively little time investment, but yields huge professional returns. Adams found that learning to write cleanly, avoiding passive voice, and eliminating unnecessary words, like asking if you'd pay $100 to remove a word from your resume, not only makes you sound smarter and more professional, but it's the foundation of humor writing.
How does passive voice relate to humor?
Passive writing kills the timing of a joke, just as surely as it kills the persuasiveness of an argument. Humor, like clear business writing, relies on active verbs, direct causality, and punchy, tight sentences. If you can master the structure of a joke, the setup and the punchline, you have mastered the structure of persuasive writing, the problem, and the solution. In the corporate world, if you write cleanly, people assume you think clearly, which leads to promotions and greater trust.
And finally, rounding out the core technical skills, he points to accounting and design.
Basic accounting competence is just necessary to avoid confusing the world and engaging in bad business models. Adams gives the example of the small restaurant that keeps changing hands. No amount of culinary passion or skill will save it if the cash flow projection, the rent, and the cost of goods simply won't work on paper. You need to understand the rules of money before you play the game.
And design, which seems like a purely artistic pursuit, he simplifies into a set of repeatable rules.
Exactly. He demystifies it. He learned simple, rule-based principles, like the L-shaped layout for composition in art or photography or even PowerPoint slides. This rule just dictates that you leave one quadrant uncluttered, the negative space. You don't need a natural eye for design. You just need to follow a few simple rules, and people will unconsciously perceive your work as more sophisticated and professional. Design, for Adams, is just a rule-based system that eliminates unnecessary complexity, reducing opportunities for failure.
The final synthesis, then, is that Adams wasn't lucky because he found one specific goal. He was lucky because he created this massive receptive opportunity space for luck to find him. He did that by being systematically prepared, acquiring all those mediocre skills, and taking constant, cheap risks, which were all those failures.
Luck is random, but preparedness is not. You have to build the system to ensure you are ready to capitalize on the lucky timing when it finally arrives. He stayed in the game long enough and armed himself with enough diverse, complementary skills that when the internet, email, feedback, and Wacom technology all converged, he was the only person in the world ready to create Dilbert at that specific moment.
Okay, let's recap the fundamental elements of the Adams system, which you, the listener, can adopt immediately. Number 1, focus on systems over goals. Use a continuous process, daily activity, continuous learning, habit creation that steadily increases your odds, rather than chasing single, finite outcomes. Systems provide continuous positive feedback. 2, failure is a resource. Don't just survive failure, mug it. Extract every piece of knowledge, every skill, every contact, and ensure you acquire a new skill every time a project dies. 3, optimize personal energy. Treat your body as a moist robot, rigorously controlling your physical and psychological inputs, diet, exercise, sleep, positive input, to maximize your energy and schedule flexibility. And 4, leverage the power of mediocre skills combined. Stop chasing world-class talent in one area. Acquire a wide variety of good enough skills, psychology, business writing, design, public speaking, to create a unique, highly defensible combination that others cannot easily match.
And if you need final proof that this systematic approach works even against seemingly insurmountable odds, we can just return to his most personal, long-term crisis, his incurable voice condition. Adams spent years dealing with spasmodic dysphonia, which is a neurological disorder that causes involuntary spasms in the larynx. It made speaking to people almost impossible.
It effectively shut down his social and public life. It was a failure of the most basic system we have, communication, and it was diagnosed as incurable by multiple medical experts. For most people, that would be the end of the story acceptance of a permanent disability.
But Adams applied his system's mindset to the problem. He didn't rely on hope or willpower. He created these highly detailed spreadsheets to track every single variable: diet, sleep, stress levels, environment, looking for a pattern, a correlation, anything that might influence the condition. He was treating his body like a test lab, just collecting data systematically year after year.
And critically, he set up a Google alert for spasmodic dysphonia. This was his continuous, low-friction, systematic search for a solution outside the standard medical consensus.
And that systematic commitment, the process of staying informed, ready, and prepared, is what paid off. Eventually, years into the struggle, a Google alert delivered a report detailing success from a doctor in Japan using this highly specific, complex nerve surgery. Adams was prepared to fly anywhere to execute this solution.
He found the doctor who could perform the nerve surgery, and he went through with the procedure. It required a lot of patience as the nerve regeneration process is slow.
And 3.5 months later, right on schedule, as the nerves regenerated, his wife heard him speak normally again. The problem that was deemed incurable by medical consensus was fixed by sticking to a pattern recognition system and staying in the game long enough for luck, in the form of a medical breakthrough, to find him. His system of tracking inputs, testing variables, continuously scanning the environment, it worked perfectly.
Which brings us back to you, the listener. If you adopt Adam's viewpoint that you are a moist robot and your attitude, your energy, and your success are 80% chemistry and inputs, how does that change how you choose to program yourself today? What small input, a specific food you eliminate, 10 minutes of exercise you add, or a new rule-based skill you begin acquiring today? What can you choose right now that will inevitably steer your output toward a more desired future? Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, follow up in next topic.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We're going to come back to continue how to fail at almost everything and still win big. Today, we are unpacking the really surprising and, I think, highly effective strategies found in this remarkable source material.
It's a great one. We're diving into the work of someone you would not expect to be a global success story in this kind of business guru space.
Right, a cartoonist.
A cartoonist who calls himself, and I think this is key, a professional simplifier.
And that phrase, professional simplifier, that's really the North Star for everything we're going to talk about today, isn't it?
It is. This isn't just, an autobiography where he lists a bunch of funny failures. It's a really rigorous, almost systematic extraction of these non-obvious strategies for success.
And his whole argument, fundamentally, is that his success wasn't just luck.
Not at all. Or even just pure raw talent. I mean, he had some of both, sure.
Of course.
But he argues it was a deliberate, conscious strategy. It was all about managing opportunities in a way that, I love this phrase, makes it easier for luck to find you. So when you look at success, you might think it's some kind of magic. He sees it as, is highly predictable math.
I really appreciate that framing, because it immediately shifts the paradigm, from just sort of passively hoping you get successful to actively engineering it.
Yes.
It puts the control right back in your hands, the listener's hands. So our mission today is really to crack open that engineering manual and understand the specific mechanisms he used to win big, even though he failed spectacularly so many times.
Exactly. And we've kind of synthesized his core philosophy into a 3-part journey for our discussion.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So first, we're going to analyze this really critical distinction between goals and systems. It's a bit controversial. And then we'll introduce this concept of personal energy as like a universal metric for your human profit.
Human profit, I like that.
Then second, we'll tackle what he calls the talent stack. It's how you can combine a bunch of mediocre skills to create this huge exponential advantage. We're going to redefine failure as basically fertilizer for your growth. And then finally, we're going to anchor this whole discussion with this central, deeply surprising case study. The author's own multi-year struggle with this debilitating, mysterious voice condition.
And he used these exact same principles to tackle it.
The very same systematic principles. It's a fascinating story.
Okay, so let's unpack that core philosophical shift right away because it is highly provocative. The sources start with this idea that goals are for losers and systems are for winners. Now, that flies in the face of, almost every self-help book published since, the 1980s?
Oh, at least.
So I have to push back on that a little bit. Why does he take such a strong stance against setting specific goals? Surely without a goal, how do you even know where the system is supposed to take you?
And that's a really fair question. Mm-hmm. But his critique, it's aimed at the psychological and the statistical failures of traditional goal setting. Yeah. See, the problem with a goal, as he defines it, is that it's a specific, singular outcome. Like, say, winning an Olympic medal or reaching a $50 million sales target by the end of the year.
Right, very concrete.
Very. But statistically, for any one person, those kinds of goals have an extremely high failure rate. So if you define your self-worth and your success
purely by hitting that one target, you are basically setting yourself up to spend 99% of your time feeling like a failure.
You're just constantly in this state of not there yet.
Exactly. You're constantly fighting gravity. You're always feeling the stress of not having reached the finish line. It's exhausting.
So the failure isn't really in the ambition itself, it's in the definition. The fact that it's binary, you've either achieved it or you haven't.
That's it. You stay in the not achieved state for way too long.
And that sounds psychologically exhausting and just frankly demotivating.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Now, the systems-oriented person, by contrast, they focus entirely on the process.
The day-to-day.
The habits, the routines, the daily effort that increases the long-term odds of success, regardless of what happens to any single project. The system itself becomes the win.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Take weight loss.
Yeah.
The goal-oriented person focuses on, say, I need to lose 20 pounds by June 1st.
Okay, that's my goal.
Right. But the systems-oriented person, they focus on a simple daily habit. I will walk 10,000 steps every single day.
I see the difference. The system person, they feel successful every day. They hit that 10,000 step mark.
They get a win every day.
Well, the goal person, they feel like a failure right up until June 1st. And if they only lose 18 pounds instead of 20, they still feel like they came up short, even after all that work.
Precisely. The system provides these continuous positive feedback loops. And he notes that a systems-oriented person, they feel themselves growing more capable every single day, whether they ever launch that specific product or get that one promotion.
Because as long as they're following the system, they're learning, creating, moving, they're succeeding in the moment.
Yes. The goal person is always looking into this uncertain future. The systems person is anchored in the achievable present.
This also really shines a light on that distinction he makes between deciding and wishing.
Oh, that's a big one. So many people, they wish they were rich or happy or successful.
Easy to wish.
Wishing is comfortable, it's safe, it stays right in your mind. But success requires deciding to pay the price. And a system is how you pay that price, day in and day out.
And that price could be anything.
It could be sacrificing your personal time or pursuing a technical path that seems frankly deadly boring but is super lucrative, or even just accepting the risk of, public embarrassment. The system helps you define what that price is and then pay it consistently.
Whereas wishing
Wishing is purely aspirational. It demands no real change in your behavior. By adopting a system, you've decided the process itself is the reward.
So once you have that system in place, the source introduces a way to measure its efficiency. He calls it the universal simplifier. And he argues that the most important metric to track isn't money or status or even just raw output, but your personal energy. How does this energy metric work as the human equivalent of profit in a business?
If you think about your body and your mind as this really complex system, your personal energy level is the net output. It's the bottom line.
Okay.
High energy directly translates into better performance across every domain. Your work, your decision-making, your learning, even just the quality of your social interactions.
It's the fuel for everything else.
It is. When you're energized, your thoughts are clear, you're more creative, and you are just significantly more resistant to all the external stress and negativity that gets thrown at you.
So the logic then follows that every decision should be filtered through one simple systemic question. Does this decision maximize my personal energy?
Yes. And this leads us straight into this other concept he calls enlightened selfishness.
Now that sounds counterintuitive.
It does, because we're always taught that self-sacrifice is this great virtue. But the source basically says there are only three kinds of people. You have the self-focused and successful. You have the self-neglecting who become, his word, stupid. And then you have those who become a burden on others.
So the best path is enlightened selfishness.
It's the optimal path.
Unpack that for us. What does that look like in practice, being enlightened selfish?
It just means prioritizing yourself first.
Yeah.
Your health, your career, your mental clarity, in these kind of concentric circles. He argues the most selfless act you can perform for the world is actually ensuring your own success and stability.
How so?
Well, think about it. If you neglect your health, you might end up needing expensive medical care that becomes a burden on your family or, society. If you neglect your career, you become a financial strain.
Whereas successful people
are net benefits to society. They pay taxes, they create jobs, they have the capacity to give back in meaningful ways.
So that reframes what a lot of people might see as a small, selfless decision, like skipping your workout to help a coworker finish an urgent project.
Right.
If that one missed workout leads to this cascade of poor health decisions, then burnout, then reduced productivity in the long run, that single selfless act actually becomes a net negative for everyone involved.
Precisely. You can only truly pour from a full cup. Enlightened selfishness just dictates that you have to protect your core system, your energy and health, at all costs.
So it's about saying no.
It's about saying no to that mandatory social event or that late-night meeting. If you know that waking up at 4 a.m. to protect your high-energy creator time is the real priority. It's a strategy for long-term maximal contribution.
And another major component of this energy metric, which I found surprising, is happiness. And it's specifically tied to timing and control.
Yes, we often equate happiness with, massive wealth. But the source suggests schedule flexibility is way more important.
More important than money.
Happiness is less about what you have and more about when you get to do it. The argument is that a person with a flexible schedule and, say, average resources might be significantly happier than a rich person who has everything but zero control over their time.
The millionaire who has to answer urgent calls at 2 in the morning.
Exactly. Or adhere to these constant, grueling deadlines. They have no freedom.
That rings so true. And control over your time, it means you can match your mental state to the task at hand.
That's it. You maximize productivity and you minimize friction. It's the concept of matching your state to the task.
Your brain isn't just an on-off switch.
No, it's not a continuous output machine. For instance, your brain is often really relaxed and highly creative early in the morning, right before the day's obligations pile up.
That's your creator mode.
That's your optimal creator mode. It's perfect for writing, strategic planning, any kind of deep conceptual work. But by mid-afternoon, that creative well is often dry.
And you're reduced to copier mode.
Exactly. You're only really capable of managing email or doing administrative tasks or just regurgitating ideas that already exist.
So the system then should be to build a schedule that reserves your peak energy hours for the hard stuff, the creator tasks.
Mm-hmm. And you save your depleted hours for the copier tasks, even if it feels weird to, handle email later in the day.
And maximizing energy also involves choosing the right strategic mindset. This is the simplifier versus optimizer debate.
A critical trade-off. Optimizers, they seek the very best, most complex, most technically perfect solution.
Which often leads to analysis paralysis.
Or just unexpected problems because the system is too complex. Simplifiers, on the other hand, they just look for the easy, most direct path. They see the world through immediately actionable systems.
And the argument is that simple systems are almost always the best way to get initial success.
Almost always. Think of a startup. They do much better by launching what they call a minimum viable product, something that's, say, 80% good, simple, functional.
Get it out there and see what people think.
Exactly. Gather feedback. Optimization, striving for that 100% perfection, that's a luxury. It's for people and businesses that are already successful. For the person just trying to break through, complicated systems just have too many points of failure, too much wasted time.
And this focus on simplicity, it extends to how we even view ourselves. This is the moist robot concept.
The moist robot.
Yeah.
It's a highly useful, very pragmatic fiction.
Of fiction.
Well, it's the idea that your mind isn't this, mysterious bag of magic driven by weird passions,
Yeah.
but a moist, programmable computer.
Okay, I'm with you.
When you adopt that mindset, you suddenly gain control over the inputs. Simple physical changes like correcting your posture or keeping your workspace tidy or even just forcing a smile. They send signals to your body and your brain about focus and energy.
You're not letting your environment dictate your attitude.
You are programming yourself. Consistency in these really simple physical systems is the key to programming yourself for high productivity and optimism, because your brain takes these powerful cues from what your body is doing. You are a feedback loop.
Part 1 gave us the framework focus on the system, maximize the energy. Now we can move to the ingredients for that system, starting with what he calls the math of success. This is where the talent stack concept comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And this feels inherently optimistic for most of us who aren't world-class geniuses in any single field.
The talent stack is, I think, a revolutionary concept because it completely bypasses the need for mastery.
Which is a relief.
It is. The formula is basically this. Every useful skill you acquire, even if you only get to a mediocre level, it doubles your odds of success.
So you don't need to be the best.
Mastery is time-consuming, and it's rare. Simply becoming good, say, a top 25% in multiple diverse areas, creates this exponential, almost monopolistic advantage.
Because you're combining skills in a way that very few other people have bothered to.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It directly challenges that whole 10,000-hour rule, which demands this extreme, laser-focused dedication to one siloed skill. The talent stack says, no, become a good generalist across a few related fields.
And the success of the Dilbert comic strip is the perfect living example of this.
It's the perfect illustration. He leverages a talent stack made up of several, frankly, mediocre skills. He admits he's not a world-class artist. His drawing is just adequate.
Right.
He's not the funniest person in the room. His writing is solid, but it's not, stand-up comic gold.
But when you combine those two decent skills with the third,
Years of corporate business experience, and a fourth, an MBA from Berkeley.
you get something totally unique.
You get something unique.
So why is that specific combination so powerful?
Because the corporate experience, that gave him all the material. The market niche, that shared, relatable misery of office life. And then the MBA, that provided the structure, the psychological understanding, and the technical business skill he needed to navigate licensing and syndication and turning this niche comic into a global brand.
So few people who could draw and write jokes had that intimate knowledge of middle management life.
And even fewer had the business acumen to capitalize on it. Individually, those four skills are pretty common, but you combine them and they create this scarcity, this profound strategic advantage. The whole was worth exponentially more than the sum of its parts.
So for you listening, if you're a decent public speaker, maybe an average data analyst, and you know the basics of marketing, you combine those three things and you immediately become a rare commodity in almost any industry.
You've just identified a monopoly of competence.
Even if you're not the best in the world at any single one of them.
Exactly. And that realization is so liberating. It means you shouldn't feel guilty about abandoning a skill once you reach that good enough status. You just move on and acquire the next skill to compound your stack.
This also relates to that psychological trick he mentions, using these totally inaccurate formulas to steer your behavior.
The famous resume trick.
Right.
Yeah. The trick is to imagine that every unnecessary word you remove from your resume saves you $100.
Which is, of course, not true.
It's completely arbitrary. The $100 figure is inaccurate.
Yeah.
But the simplicity and the concreteness of that formula, it successfully steers your behavior toward concise, powerful writing.
So the lesson is that simplicity trumps accuracy when the goal is just changing your behavior.
If a simple cognitive framework works, use it, even if it's technically flawed.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. This whole systems approach, it requires a totally different, almost transactional relationship with failure. And the author's failure list is just magnificent.
He's long.
The Velcro rosin bag, the meditation guide, multiple failed computer games. How does he propose we should approach failure?
Failure, in his worldview, it's not a final outcome. It is a tool. It's a resource that he says must be mugged for its value.
Mugged for its value.
The analogy is visceral and memorable. If you find a cow turd on your steps, you don't just feel stronger for having survived seeing it. You have to shovel that turd onto your garden and use it as fertilizer.
You have to extract concrete value.
Concrete value, whether that's knowledge or networking contacts or a technical skill or just a fundamental realization about how the market works.
So let's review a few of those failures and see what kind of fertilizer was extracted. The first one was the Velcro rosin bag invention.
That failure taught him a really fundamental, tough lesson.
Oh.
Good ideas have almost zero value in the market
Ouch.
because the market rewards execution, not just the idea itself. The idea went nowhere, but he learned to concentrate his energy on things he could actually execute and control.
Instead of just dreaming up concepts.
Right.
And what about the attempts at computer games? I know he spent years developing one.
He did, a space-themed arcade game. And that failed because he took so long creating it that the technology just surged ahead, making his game archaic the day it was released.
Ah, brutal.
But the valuable outcome was immense. He learned enough about personal computers, programming, and system architecture to look like a technical genius in the corporate world of the 1980s.
So that skill extracted from that failure.
It directly propelled his career forward. It gave him the time and the freedom to eventually pursue Dilbert.
The meditation guide, I think it sold 3 copies. What was the takeaway there?
It taught him the mechanics of local advertising, marketing fundamentals, and the painful reality of product development costs.
Okay.
And later, his video on the internet venture failed because the timing was just premature. Internet speeds weren't ready for widespread video streaming.
The lesson there.
The massive lesson there was that timing is often the single biggest component of success. And since you can't predict timing,
You just have to adopt a system of trying multiple diverse things until you get lucky.
It's a systemic approach to increasing the probability of chance. And then the keypad patent, which was actually granted, was quickly made obsolete by smartphones.
A perfect illustration of how you can do everything right, execute perfectly on a good idea, but the external world can just shift underneath you.
So all of these examples, they highlight the need for a system to know when to quit versus when to, as he puts it, chew through some walls.
Persistence is a virtue, but only if you're not stubbornly executing an idiocy.
Right.
And the ultimate turning point for Dilbert illustrates this perfectly. The sales stalled after the initial launch. The strip only really took off after he consciously implemented a new system.
What was it?
He started printing his email address on the comic and soliciting unfiltered, often savage feedback from the public.
That unfiltered feedback was the resource, the fertilizer he needed.
Exactly. The audience consistently preferred the comics where Dilbert was in the office, talking about the banal cruelties of middle management. This forced him to pivot the focus of the strip.
And that was the spark in the gasoline.
That was it. If your work inspires excitement or engagement or even passionate negative feedback from customers, that's your signal. That's when you double down and chew through some walls.
But until you get that powerful feedback,
The system recommends letting go and moving to the next opportunity.
this philosophy also informs the distinction between practice and experience. If you're not a natural practicer, someone who actually embraces mindless repetition,
Like the 3-year-old tennis prodigy you mentioned.
right, then you should avoid strategies that require it.
Yeah, if you find mindless repetition to be actual torture, do not try to become a concert pianist or master calligraphy or become a high-level athlete. It's just not for you.
So what's the alternative?
Pursue fields that reward novelty seeking. These are fields where you build skills through an ever-changing sequence of experiences. He calls this experience the more fun cousin of practice.
I like that.
Experience is about variation and novelty. Practice is about, putting your consciousness in suspended animation until the muscle memory is formed.
Yeah.
You have to choose the path that maximizes your personal energy.
We've established the systematic approach to a career. Now we get to the central anecdote that really puts this entire system to the test. This idea of embracing failure, operating like a moist robot. The physical breakdown that threatened to end his career not just once, but twice. Let's talk about what he called the Pinky Rebellion.
So by the early 1990s, he had this intense, just unrelenting schedule of drawing Dilbert starting at 4 in the morning before his day job.
Wow.
And this led to a really serious physical problem, focal dystonia. It's a neurological condition that causes these involuntary muscle spasms.
And for him, it was in his drawing hand.
In the pinky finger of his drawing hand, the Pinky Rebellion. It made it nearly impossible for him to draw consistent straight lines.
How did he fix that?
He forced himself to switch to digital drawing, a system change.
Right.
But the much more devastating problem came later, in 2005.
Which was?
The sudden, completely baffling inability to speak normally to other human beings.
Social laryngitis, as he calls it. It's just fascinating and terrifying. So he could speak normally when he was alone.
Perfectly fine alone, talking to his cat, singing in the shower, no problem. But the moment he entered a social context or tried to have a conversation, his throat would just seize up.
And the doctors couldn't find a cause.
They systematically eliminated everything: physical allergies, tumors, neurological damage. Eventually, they just referred him to a psychologist. The clear implication was, this is all in your head.
And despite how dire that situation was, he saw it as an opportunity.
A profound opportunity to run a critical, high-stakes experiment to find a pattern. He had a professional speaking gig scheduled in front of 1,000 people.
That's a massive risk.
Huge personal and professional risk. Potential humiliation in front of an audience of fans. But he needed to know if his voice would work for a completely memorized, canned speech.
And the outcome of that test was crucial.
It was. His voice worked. It was raspy, a little strained, but he got through the whole 45-minute talk. But the second the context switched,
Backstage, talking to people normally.
his throat snapped shut again.
Yeah.
He could only whisper.
So what did that confirm for him?
2 essential things for his system. First, the problem was unequivocally neurological and context-dependent, not just physical. And second, this crisis was rich with extractable knowledge. As he put it, he was going to mug the shit out of this failure.
The doctors couldn't name the invisible assassin.
So he used the ultimate system, the internet, which he affectionately calls the smarter creature.
And what did the internet reveal?
By systematically searching for patterns and symptoms, he found the name, spasmodic dysphonia.
He had a diagnosis.
An expert confirmed it, but the prognosis was bleak. The general consensus was, there is no cure.
Which is the ultimate crushing goal, to cure the incurable.
It demanded a system, not a passive wish. But the author, he adopted this optimistic translation. Since there is no cure, Scott, you will be the first person in the world to be cured.
And the standard treatment at the time was just temporary.
Temporary and, as he described it, creepy. Botox injections through the neck to paralyze the overactive vocal cord muscles. It only offered a few weeks of relief.
Not a long-term fix.
So he designed this highly pragmatic two-part system to tackle this medical impossibility. The first part was meticulous data tracking. He created a huge spreadsheet logging every possible variable: diet, sleep, alcohol, diet cokes, stress levels, everything.
All to find a pattern that correlated with his worst voice stays.
Exactly.
And what was the outcome of that massive data dump?
Interestingly, no clear pattern emerged. And that's a critical lesson in systematic thinking. Sometimes, data tracking just confirms the randomness of a problem.
Or at least the extreme subtlety of the pattern. It forces you to look elsewhere.
It does.
So if the internal data failed, he had to mobilize the external world. What was the second part of his system?
Google Alerts. He effectively mobilized the entire planet's medical research community using a simple keyword search. He was constantly scouring the internet for any mention of his condition coupled with the word cure or treatment.
And that eventually paid off.
It did. It alerted him to a doctor in Japan, a Dr. Burke, who was reporting success with a specific surgical procedure.
That surgical procedure sounds like a massive leap of faith.
It was. The source explains he was facing a high-risk surgery with about a 15% chance of no improvement at all, plus the potential to damage his vocal cords permanently.
A one-way trip to the unknown.
It was. And this is where the medical detail is so interesting. Dr. Burke's procedure wasn't simple. It was a conceptual repair of the neural communication.
What does that mean?
Well, spasmodic dysphonia is thought to involve a misfiring, like a short circuit, in the nerves controlling the vocal cords. The surgery involved cutting the malfunctioning nerve and then using a nerve graft to repair it. The idea was to force the nerve to regenerate cleanly, resetting the system.
So like a physical reset button for the neurological system.
That's a great way to put it. And the breakthrough followed the exact scientific prediction the doctor made. He gave him a timeline, and almost to the day, 3.5 months later, he was in a car with his wife. And she just said, "You just talked." The dropping of syllables, the social locking, it was just gone. His voice was weak and breathy at first, but the connection was made. Fluency came back slowly over years of silence.
Wow. The success of that surgery, it really underscores the power of these systematic, data-driven external search systems.
Even when your own biology is failing you. And he layered on another system, one that many people might consider magical.
Affirmations.
Affirmations. Even though he's a vocal skeptic of anything mystical, he systematically used the affirmation, "I, Scott Adams, will speak perfectly."
But he didn't treat it as magic.
No, he treated it as a system for achieving positive self-programming. Affirmations are a psychological hack to prop up optimism, motivation, and focus.
How does that system work on the moist robot?
Well, affirmations work because they force you to think about the desired outcome. They minimize the mental time you spend on negative outcomes or self-pity. This puts you in a more consistently optimistic mindset.
And optimists see more opportunities.
By definition, yes. They notice more opportunities, they take more calculated risks, they're more focused on solutions. The affirmation system doesn't magically manifest a cure, but it makes you an easier target for luck to find.
Because you're actively scanning the horizon for solutions.
Like Dr. Burke's paper in Japan. It's a low willpower way of programming your internal machine for success.
So this systematic approach, it applies not just to health and career, but also to social and professional interaction. Let's move to the last skill on our list, humor engineering. The source argues that humor is much more than just entertainment. It's a high-utility professional skill.
It really is. Humor directly influences energy and willpower, both yours and for the people around you. People who can generate a genuine laugh are, it's scientifically proven, more attractive and desirable to be around.
It's an energy booster.
A vital one. It helps transport the mind away from daily troubles, puts problems in perspective, and it creates this positive association with you. If you can make people feel better, You are maximizing their energy metric, and they will naturally gravitate towards you.
And the beauty of humor engineering is that you don't even have to be the star comedian. You can just be the straight person.
Absolutely. You engineer the conditions for fun. Being the straight person means you skillfully steer the conversation toward fun, ripe topics, things that are relatable or a little absurd, and that frees up others to try to be funny themselves.
It's more about effort and attitude than quality.
You're signaling that it's safe to laugh and engage. But if you're trying to be funny, there are some crucial traps that you have to systematically avoid.
Okay, what are the primary humor traps?
First, over-complaining. One witty, succinct complaint about a shared problem can be funny.
But 5 just turns into griping.
And that's a major energy drain for everyone. Second is overdoing self-deprecation. A single self-deprecating comment can look confident.
But too many.
Too many transform you from a confident jokester into a professional sad sack, what the source calls a chihuahua.
Okay, what else?
Third, never mock people, whether they're present or absent. It just establishes a pattern that you're untrustworthy. And finally, be very wary of puns and wordplay.
Why is that?
They're highly niche. They're only really appreciated by hardcore pun lovers. If you don't know your audience loves them, just avoid them.
Yeah.
They often signal low-effort humor.
That's good counsel. And humor is closely related to effective storytelling. What are the essential mechanics that make a story engaging?
He isolates 2 core elements, relatability and the twist.
Okay.
Your stories have to focus on topics the listener can deeply relate to, like dealing with an incompetent bureaucrat, or a technical malfunction, or just the absurdities of life. If you talk about a niche topic, people just drift off.
And the twist?
The story is utterly pointless without the twist. Something unexpected, unusual, or slightly absurd has to happen at the climax.
That's the spark.
Yes. And the punchline, it shouldn't necessarily solve the problem, but it should inspire the listener to complete the story in their own mind.
So they engage with it.
They engage deeply, which reinforces the connection between you and them.
Moving beyond humor, the foundation for all this social and professional success is a systematic understanding of psychology. He rates it as a solid 10 for importance. Why is it non-negotiable?
Because we are all constantly in the business of managing perception. We're selling some version of ourselves or our ideas or our services. Every single business negotiation, social interaction, internal pitch, it all requires a basic systematic understanding of how the human brain perceives and processes reality. What you don't know about cognitive biases can and will cost you.
The sources reference the huge depth of this field, pointing to those long lists of cognitive biases that govern our irrationality confirmation bias, the framing effect, hyperbolic discounting. Can we just ground 1 or 2 of those in a business context?
Absolutely. Let's take confirmation bias. This is our tendency to seek out, interpret, and recall information that confirms what we already believe.
We see what we want to see.
In a business context, if you are convinced your new product is going to be a massive success, you will systematically filter out any data, customer feedback, market analysis, anything that suggests otherwise. You bias yourself right into failure because your system is rejecting vital feedback.
Or the framing effect.
Right. The framing effect is all about how the presentation of an issue influences the decision. If I present a cancer treatment to you and say, this procedure has a 90% survival rate, you're likely to say yes.
Seems good.
But if I frame it as, this procedure has a 10% chance of death, even though the data is identical, you are far more likely to say no.
That's powerful.
Understanding that people respond to how information is framed, rather than the raw data itself, is a fundamental persuasion skill.
And this leads us right back to the moist machine theory, the distinction between reason and rationalization.
This is tremendously useful knowledge for any professional. If you operate under the assumption that people use cold, hard reason for important decisions, you're going to spend your entire life frustrated and confused.
People aren't logical.
He learned through his studies of hypnosis that people are primarily moist machines, responding to visceral, emotional, or sensory inputs. Reason is almost always used after the fact to rationalize an emotional decision that was already made.
The classic car buying analogy. The customer sees a car that just feels right, and then they spend the next 20 minutes building a logical argument to convince themselves the price is fair.
Precisely. Trying to defeat an emotional decision with logic is a complete waste of time and energy. Once you accept that humans are moist machines, you stop wasting energy on flawed logical arguments and you start focusing on the emotional inputs and triggers.
And that systematic understanding opens up a whole persuasion toolkit.
It does, based on appearance, energy, and emotional leverage.
Let's run through a few key techniques from that toolkit. What makes someone appear persuasive, like a leader, even if they're internally freaking out?
Decisiveness. Acting decisively, even if you are internally struggling with doubts, looks exactly like leadership. It satisfies the human craving for certainty. People prefer a confident guess to an anxious paralysis.
Move the ball forward.
Exactly. Energy is also powerfully contagious. If you approach a pitch with genuine enthusiasm, others want to experience that same rush of vitality. It makes your idea instantly more attractive.
And then there's the fun one. Calculated insanity in negotiations.
Yes. The general rule is that reasonable people will usually cave to irrational people because it just seems like the path of least resistance.
So you manufacture irrationality.
We systematically assign an unreasonably high emotional value to an otherwise mundane part of a deal. For example, you're negotiating a closing date for a contract. You demand it closes before a holiday, arguing with intense emotion that the signing is specifically intended as a family gift.
The other party is thinking, this is completely illogical.
Of course. But since emotions don't bend to reason, that emotional argument holds this incredible irrational power. You've introduced an emotional stake that the logical opponent can't counter, and they'll often just concede the minor point to resolve the tension.
And finally, just your voice.
Your voice technique. Using a serious, deeper, more measured tone, it signals importance and leadership potential. It can make you seem far more capable than you might feel. These are all just systematic inputs to manage the perception of the moist robot you're talking to.
This has been a really intensive deep dive into engineering success through systems, not goals. We've covered a massive amount of ground here.
We really have.
Recognizing that psychological advantage of systems over these binary outcomes, leveraging the energy metric through simple health habits, building that powerful talent stack by combining mediocre skills.
And, so importantly, understanding that success demands you recognize failure as necessary raw material.
And critically, we saw how that systematic approach, the spreadsheet tracking, the Google alerts, the nerve graft research, even the use of affirmations for focus, allowed the author to systematically mug a devastating biological failure.
He turned an incurable health crisis into a successful search for a solution. Failure, when you process it correctly, it becomes the necessary input for your future success.
It all comes down to that core choice presented in the source material, doesn't it? Do you view yourself as this fleshy bag of magic and mystery driven by fate and inexplicable passion?
Or do you view yourself pragmatically as a moist, programmable robot?
The moist robot model, while maybe less romantic, it offers profound control.
It does. You control the inputs, your diet, your exercise, your focus, your associations, and those inputs will systematically determine your outcomes. When you view success not as some kind of talent lottery, but as a learnable skill, and you focus relentlessly on developing robust systems rather than clinging to specific goals, you literally manipulate the odds of luck finding you.
That system of inputs is so crucial. And if you're looking for a simple, low willpower system to program yourself for change, you should reflect on the concept of association programming.
That is the ultimate input control. The premise is that your location and the people you spend your time with are the primary programming interfaces for your moist robot brain.
So you change your environment.
You systematically change your environment. You spend time exclusively with people who represent the change you're seeking. Fit people, genuinely optimistic winners, highly productive individuals, and their habits and their energy will literally rub off on you without you needing immense amounts of extra willpower.
Their systems become your systems.
Their systematic routines become activated in your own brain, making positive behavior easier and more natural. It's essentially outsourcing your willpower to your environment.
It's a powerful final thought. Success doesn't always require fighting against yourself. Sometimes it just requires changing who you sit next to. This has been our deep dive for today. Thank you for watching. Please like, say, share, subscribe, follow up in next video for more deep dives.
Right, let's get straight into it. We're ready to dive back into, well, a surprisingly counterintuitive guide to success. It's all about building a winning life, despite, a history of setbacks. So today, we proudly come back to continue how to fail at almost everything and still win big. And for this deep dive, we're really extracting the core operating philosophy. It's all about leveraging failure into a system that just keeps winning. We're going to focus on three big areas that honestly most people miss. First, the subject's life actually demands, then the psychological power of the people you hang out with, and finally this ultimate unified theory that ties it all together: energy, success, happiness. Okay, let's unpack this.
What's so fascinating here is the author's whole perspective. He doesn't, claim to be some kind of guru. He calls himself a professional simplifier. His job, creating Dilbert, was basically to strip away all the corporate nonsense until you're left with this absurd yet true core of how people behave. So the mission for you here is to find your own success formula by sort of holding these ideas up against what you're doing now. It's all about pattern recognition and just paying attention.
Okay, so to even start that comparison, we have to get our heads around the absolute foundation of his system, which he puts in, well, the most provocative way possible. Goals are for losers, systems are for winners. Now, on its face, that just sounds ridiculous. You need goals, don't you?
It does sound counterintuitive, but it actually defines the difference perfectly. A goal it's a one-time thing. You either hit it or you miss it. Like, your goal is to make a stock go up 20%. If it doesn't, you feel like a failure, right? A system, on the other hand, is a process. It's something you do consistently. It's more about the method than the specific outcome.
So how do you take that from, say, a financial system like Warren Buffett's and turn it into a personal system for growth?
It just completely changes your relationship with your day-to-day work. If your system is, say, write 500 words every day, you win every single time you do it. It doesn't matter if that writing leads to a bestseller tomorrow. You did the work. You won the day. And that little win is the key to handling failure.
So what does this all mean then? It's that feeling of just getting a little bit better every day, playing the capacity game.
Exactly. When you're systems oriented, you feel yourself getting more capable every single day. If you're chasing a goal and you fail, which, happens all the time, you just want to quit. The effort feels wasted. Yeah. But with a system, a failure just means you need to tweak the process. You don't abandon it. You're always winning that capacity game, gaining skills, gaining knowledge. And that's what stops you from quitting after the first or, the 10th massive screw up. It's a conscious strategy for getting lucky.
That distinction-winning capacity daily versus just waiting for some distant goal. That's huge. It gives you the endurance you need. Which brings us to what schools totally miss: life's required subjects. And here's where it gets really, really interesting. The book's formula is that every new skill you acquire actually doubles your odds of success.
And that is the whole idea behind the power of having, a few mediocre skills. We're always told to pursue mastery, right? But that bar is incredibly high. He argues that it's not about being the world's best at one thing. It's about being pretty good, say, top 25% in 2 or 3 things. You combine them and suddenly you're unique, you're valuable.
But wait, the author is a rich and famous cartoonist. Isn't drawing the one thing he had to be great at? How does that work?
That's the perfect illustration of it. He admits it himself. He's not the best artist. He's not even the single funniest writer out there. But he had 2 things the average cartoonist doesn't: real corporate business experience and an MBA. So Dilbert wasn't just funny drawings. It was, sharp, relatable commentary on office life. The business knowledge was the framework that turned it into a brand. The combination, okay drawing, good humor, excellent business sense. It's worth so much more than the sum of its parts. Quantity beats quality when you combine skills strategically.
So if we're looking for those high leverage skills, what are, say, 2 of these untaught subjects we should focus on?
The first one, and this is surprisingly important, is business writing. Most of us think we can write, but professional writing is a whole different beast. It's all about clarity and just cutting out the noise.
Why does clean writing matter that much, though? It feels so basic.
Because it's an instant credibility filter. I mean it. When your email or your memo is clean, concise, active voice, you just seem smarter, more organized. Your ideas are more persuasive. And you can learn it pretty quickly, but that ROI lasts your entire career. He also says it's the foundation for humor writing because extra words just kill a joke's timing.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second one?
The second, and I'd say this is the big one, is psychology. On a scale of 1 to 10 in importance, it's a solid 10.
I think we all kind of assume people are rational actors, but he pushes back on that hard. He calls people moist machines. What's the idea there?
The idea is that our behavior is more driven by inputs than by pure reason. We're predictable. You have to understand how the human brain perceives things, or you'll just keep falling for your own biases. The key is understanding comparison, what behavioral economists call anchoring.
Give us the classic example of that.
The real estate agent trick is perfect. To sell a slightly overpriced house, they first show you a total wreck, an absolute dump, but with a really high price tag. That high price becomes your anchor. So when they show you the second house, the one they actually want to sell, it suddenly seems like an amazing bargain. They didn't change the house, just your perception of it.
That irrational comparison trap, it's a total blind spot. And it can hurt you even when you're the one who's already successful, like with his second comic, Plop.
Oh, absolutely. Plop was, by all accounts, a better drawn comic than his early Dilbert strips, but it failed.
Yeah.
And it failed because readers weren't comparing it to other new comics. They were comparing it to a mature, fully developed Dilbert. His own success created an anchor that, well, it doomed his next project.
Wow, that ties perfectly into the next system component, the power of who you're with. He calls it association programming. You said he mocked this idea at first.
Yeah, he totally did. He thought it was some kind of, vague magic. He made fun of an intern who picked an apartment just to be near rich people. But later he realized it's not magic at all. It's exposure. It's normalization. The human impulse is to just pick up the habits and the energy of the people you're around.
So if you're always around people who complain about work or are inactive, that just starts to feel normal. It's the easy path. But if you surround yourself with optimists, with builders, their energy becomes your path of least resistance.
Precisely. It's like using your social life as a user interface to program your own brain. He saw a coworker start submitting articles and getting paid for them, and suddenly that path seemed real, achievable. It wasn't some far-off dream anymore. That optimism, that high energy, it literally rubs off.
And the practical application is pretty simple then. You don't have to go network with CEOs. Just find friends who know different things than you do, people with complementary systems.
That's a crucial distinction. He tells a story about getting his first speaking gig for $5,000, not because he was a master negotiator, but because a smart friend in his company just told him, here's how you get started, and here's the fee to ask for. That friend had knowledge he didn't. That's the shortcut.
This moves us perfectly to the big one, the unified theory, that kind of ties all this together. And it all comes down to maximizing your personal energy.
Right. If you boil everything down, success is just having the energy to run your systems day in and day out. He lays out this really clear hierarchy, a personal energy model that just, it works.
How does that hierarchy work? If you want to start maximizing this energy today, where do you begin?
You start with diet first. That's the input. It's the fuel. If you're running on garbage, your output is going to be garbage.
Right.
Once your diet is optimized for consistent energy, you use that energy to exercise. And exercise is key because it actually improves your body's ability to create and use more energy. It's a feedback loop.
So diet fuels the engine, and exercise builds a bigger, better engine.
Exactly. And that increased energy makes you more productive, more positive, and frankly, more socially desirable. People are just drawn to energetic, positive people, which then fuels your association programming, right? It brings more luck, more opportunity into your system.
And that energy is directly linked to happiness. He defines happiness not as a destination, but just as pleasant body chemistry, a sensation.
That's it. You can't find happiness through achievements. It's an internal chemical game. And the single biggest trick for manipulating that chemistry, more than money, more than anything, is having a flexible schedule. Doing what you want when you want to do it.
Why is schedule freedom more important than just being wealthy?
Because it gives you autonomy. And autonomy just kills the stress and anxiety that disrupt your body chemistry. If you can take a 2-hour break when you feel burned out or do your hardest work when you're naturally at your best, you're constantly optimizing your own internal state. You make work pleasurable just by controlling the timing.
Okay, finally, we have to talk about failure. If this whole system is built on energy and process, where does failure fit in?
You have to invite failure in. You survive it. And then, in his words, you have to mug the shit out of it. Failure can't be an endpoint. It has to be a resource that you manage and extract value from.
Mugging failure. That sounds intense. What does that actually look like?
Every single failure gives you something valuable. Either it's new knowledge, a new skill, maybe you had to learn basic accounting to fix a mess or new contacts. When his early inventions failed, he didn't just walk away. He learned that the market rewards execution, not just ideas. That's a priceless lesson. So you treat the failure like a tuition payment. You paid the price. Now extract the lesson and fold it back into your system.
So the roadmap is really clear. Adopt a system. Focus on acquiring those high-leverage, mediocre skills, optimize your energy, and then use failure as raw material for growth. And remember that success itself is a habit. Even small wins build momentum.
And as you're doing all this, Always remember the difference between what feels like magic and what's really just math and psychology. Remember his tennis story, losing for 7 years, thinking he was cursed. But it wasn't a curse, it was just bad math. He was making the wrong shots based on probability. So if you find yourself failing over and over, don't blame fate. Look for the subtle pattern. Pick the worldview or even the delusion that boosts your energy and works for you. Because sometimes your perception of reality matters a whole lot more than reality itself.
With that fascinating framework in mind, thank you for watching now. Please like, share, subscribe, follow up in the next video.